Well, good evening. It's midnight. It's late. I know I'm going to bed soon, but I wanted to take just a few minutes, and I think that's all it's really going to take in terms of how to deal with critics in your life. And this could also be bullies, both at the youth level and the adult level. There's not a lot of differences, really. And I think the reason I can speak with some understanding or authority on this issue is that both as a youth and as an adult I have dealt with bullying. Bullying to myself, bullying to my friends, bullying to people I care about. And I've just noticed there's some patterns. And we're not going to get into anything real deep because I think it's often overanalyzed and overthought. Understanding bullies and dealing with them isn't complicated. I think the part that people they don't want to believe what motivates a bully, and they don't want to believe what the solution is. So hear me out. Let's talk about critics first. Critics are those who talk bad about you behind your back, who try to, and I'm talking about not critics as in like they have something critical to say about your work. That's not a bad thing, really. If they're saying something's bad about your work, and it's true, be very grateful for that information. It's something you obviously didn't know and you need to improve upon. I'm talking about the kind of critic who's attacking your character when you know for a fact, and other people you trust and love for a fact, do not question this part of your character. I'm talking about those who are trying to defame you, who are trying to, you might say, slander you or libel you. And we're not going to deal with the legal sense here. I'm talking about a critic who is constantly trying to put you down. Probably because you either say or do something they don't like, or you advocate for something that they don't agree with. Especially if you're in a leadership role and you have some control over it, critics really like to exist in this world. Now, one thing I'm going to say up front is, don't try to get rid of your critics. Do not try to silence them. Do not defame them back. If you want the problem to get worse, those are the things you do. The solution for dealing with a critic begins with not silencing their free speech, not saying anything negative back, not defaming them in any way. It's very important that you are the better person in this relationship, that you do not steep down to those levels when other people do. Because in order to successfully deal with your critic, everybody around you needs to know that you're not like them, that you feel no need to be critical back. You feel no need to defame them. You feel no need to silence them. What that tells other people is you're confident in who you are and what you're doing, and you're not trying to silence other people just like you don't want to be silenced and nobody else wants to be silenced. So that's a very good and healthy thing. So those are the do nots. What are the do's? First of all, treat your critic exactly as you do everybody else, with kindness, with understanding, with patience, with appropriate compliments, things that are true and real and obvious. And don't go out of your way. You do not, when I say don't treat them any differently, I mean positively or negative. Treat them like another person. Second of all, take this opportunity to review what you're saying or doing and see if you can say it or do it in a way that doesn't invite the critic. I have written over 50 books, and it turns out that, let's just say one critic had trouble with 3 of my books. Well, none of them were of any grand importance to anything I was doing. It was more or less just me thinking about something, trying to figure it out. That's it. For me, it was an intellectual exercise. For them, it was super important. I really struggled with the idea of silencing myself because they wanted me to. But this is where your values come in. And you have to honestly ask yourself, do you have values, and do you know what order they are in? Because free speech is pretty high on my list. It's so high that I will not silence somebody else. But I maintain the voluntary right to silence myself, and sometimes wisdom, which is a higher value, dictates that. And I discovered that it wasn't worth having these books out there if the higher value of being able to have peace was worth it. And it was. So I decided to not publish those 3 books. I don't know if in the future I will or not. If you're a beginning author or speaker or something like that, you tend to think that everything you write has value. You will discover over time that 2/3 of what you write is rubbish. And maybe these 3 books are rubbish. What I do know is that they are not worth the price of peace. Now, some things are. And there's some things I write that I would never retract. And I'm not necessarily retracting these. I'm just going quiet on them, because peace is the higher value for something that for me is ultimately just an intellectual exercise. So that's another way you can deal with your critics. Now let's move on to bullies. When you're dealing with a bully, you're dealing with somebody who you know isn't just talking bad about you. That's what a critic does. Who isn't just defaming you, but is literally trying to sabotage you. Now you might say, what's the difference between criticism and sabotage? Sabotage is they are saying or doing things in an attempt to remove you from a position that you have rightly earned. Now, if you are in a position you haven't earned, if you lied to get there, cheated to get there, manipulated to get there, whatever, or got there through nepotism or whatever else, then whatever's coming at you is coming at you. Let's be clear about that. But if you've worked hard, and you've, generally speaking, done what you need to do to be in the position you're in, and this bully is trying to eliminate you from that position, now I'm talking about adult bullies here, then some different things come into play. First of all, you have to do some homework. And what I mean by homework is you are going to have to, over time, endure and document the bullying. You've got to have a paper trail as an adult. Even if this is never going to go to court, even if this is never going to be a legal issue or even an issue of employment, if this bully is trying to sabotage you, you need to do your homework. You need to endure it and write it down. You need to have a log, documentation, proof and evidence as you can come about it. You need to be aware of your legal rights. And what I mean by that is, as long as you are part of a conversation, you are literally there in person talking to this other person, you can record it without their knowledge. It is absolutely illegal to record a conversation you are not a part of. So don't do that. You can't set up a bug in their home, but you can wire yourself, and you can absolutely record conversations you yourself are in. Now again, this is not necessarily for legal use. Your logbook, your documentation, your proof, your evidence, your recordings, you are accumulating this. So where does this come in handy? Well, I believe you should do what the Bible says. I believe you should, after a while, you've accumulated this evidence, you've accumulated this logbook, you've put together these recordings, you should then make copies of all that stuff and confront that person. You should not give them any of the stuff. You should simply have it on your person and say, I want you to know that I'm fully aware that you are bullying me. And I'm not going to let you be in denial of that fact. Because I have been very concerned about this fact, I have documented multiple instances. I have multiple recordings. I have done all this. I am not interested in going to the police. I am not interested in going to the courts. I want to avoid anything like that. What I want you to do is recognize to me what you've been doing. And I want you to think about it. And I want you to know that I'm not going to tolerate it anymore. And at that point in the conversation, I would leave. Now, here's the deal. This is exactly why people don't want to deal with bullies in an effective manner, because it takes courage. Did you hear me say that? It takes courage. 3 times in my life, I've had to do this. And I can tell you, I have tried everything else. If you're dealing with a bully as an adult, especially as an adult, you must confront your bully directly. The only exceptions I can think of is if you think this person could cause you imminent physical harm. In that case, you should probably go to the police. You should seek legal counsel. But if you're talking about somebody who's coming at you emotionally, who's coming at you psychologically, you should confront them. Do not give them any copies of the evidence. Just simply say you have it near you, you have copies of it, and you're only doing this because you're encouraging them to stop. I had one situation, for example, an adult leader in an organization I was in, and that's all I'm going to say, who had a very short temper, who yelled and screamed at everybody, who micromanaged everybody. The truth is, he was a bully to everybody. The only reason why he started to target me a little more directly was because, unlike everybody else, I had finally decided I was not afraid of him anymore. I didn't care what potential cost there was in confronting him. For the sake of myself and these people I cared about, I was going to confront him. I want you to know I did that 3 times before I went to the people above him, because he would not change. And the reason why he would not change was because even though other people had confronted him in the past, and he had successfully bullied them out of the organization, essentially, he had finally met somebody who was not going to stop until he stopped. But unfortunately, since he had been there for 25 years, he was totally unconvinced he would ever have to stop. And it turns out that the authorities above him removed him. It's not what I wanted. I wanted reconciliation. But at the same time, the relief that came to that organization and to myself was vast. And to this day, it's felt. It is so unfortunate it had to end that way. And that I don't even know if to this day he still understands the pattern of behavior that got him there. And I think probably even sometime in the past that pattern of behavior was acceptable. But it's not now. And it's not in this context. And the truth is, it never was. It's just, are you going to be the kind of person that has the bravery and the courage to confront the bully as an adult? And are you willing to do your homework? Let me tell you something else about this. If you do decide to have the courage and the boldness and to follow through, it's extraordinarily rewarding. Talk about the ability to conquer your demons and your fears. Ever since that last incident, I can tell you, I haven't really feared man since. It has given me a confidence to do the right thing and not fear the consequences for doing the right thing. Because sometimes there are consequences for doing the right thing. That's why there's that old piece of wisdom that no good deed goes unpunished. That certainly has happened to me. But the difference is now I realize that the rewards are far superior to the punishments. The positives far outweigh the negatives. It also instills in others a degree of respect for you, that if they're going to mess with you, that there's going to be an expectation that they have a good reason. And that eliminates a lot of drama around you in your life. This is also something sometimes you have to do with your kids or even your spouse. I haven't had this situation, but sometimes people are bullied by their kids or their spouse, and you have got to be able to confront them and risk them hating you. I mean that. You've got to not care what they think of you. You've got to care about the right thing as your highest value. There's a verse in the New Testament where Jesus says, if you try to keep your life, you'll lose it. But if you lose your life for my sake, you will find it. And I finally understood what that verse meant on a practical level. What that verse means is, if you think you can reason your way or peaceably find a way around these kinds of situations, you're wrong. You have to go the way of the cross. You have to confront the malevolence heading toward you and endure it. And then if you do, you'll rise again. Now let's deal with bullies from a youth's perspective when you're a kid. This is something that is not going to be orthodox. I dealt with two bullies as a kid in particular who really meant me wrong and harm. And that's what bullies do. They're trying to get a kick out of your misery. Well, uh, I'm going to describe the lessons I learned because I tried being nice. I tried to ignore them. I tried to get adult help. To this day, what's kind of funny about all those things is it really doesn't work with bullies because the bullies know how to game the system. And because of overprotective parents nowadays, even of the bullies, they can often get away with just about anything. And school systems are extremely hesitant to label kids as bullies because once they go there, it's so severe that it's, again, mostly avoided. That's the problem with hanging the noose too high, so to speak, is that then nobody's ever put on the noose. It's a terrible visual illustration, but you understand what I mean. This is not a politically correct channel. So if you're a youth and you're dealing with a bully, there's one common thread from what I just talked about that needs to be expressed to you as well. You need to develop courage. And let me tell you why. And this is proven throughout a tremendous amount of literature and studies. It's not talked about because it's the confrontational approach. But it is the confrontational approach that solves the bully problem. It absolutely is. And what that means is that bully has to know you're going to stand up for yourself and you are going to resist. Here's why that's so effective. Bullies are looking for weak-minded targets that aren't going to tell, that aren't going to, that will do anything to make it stop, peace at any cost. And there's a lot of adults who are like this too. But if you want the bullying to stop, you want people to respect you, you've got to stand up for yourself and you've got to resist. So what that means is, whatever the bully does, you tell them, looking them in the eye, and confidently, stop. And then if they say, what are you going to do about it? Or something along those lines, because you know that's what's going to happen. Your response should be something along the lines of, I will pursue, I will do whatever it takes to find a way to make you stop. And I will not stop until that day comes. Something like that. You don't want to get threatening. You don't want to threaten to do anything in particular. You're just letting them know that you're standing up for yourself and you're going to resist. Now, this bully is going to test that. Be aware of that. Because he thought he picked the right person and he doesn't want to be proven wrong. So he's going to push you. He's going to find some way to see if you really mean it. Now, this is a piece of advice that used to be commonplace. You go back to the beginning of time up until about the 1980s, and this was the advice. And that is when that time comes for that bully to push you, you push back. Now here's the deal. You're probably going to have to endure some kind of a punishment from the authority, whether it's the school, the principal, the teacher, the class, whatever. That's called sacrifice. And it's incredibly effective. If you're willing to risk a singular punishment in exchange for getting rid of the bully and having the respect of your classmates, that's a really good deal. That's a great exchange. What everybody's looking for is the golden goose. They want the solution where the bully goes away and they don't have to endure anything themselves. That's not real life. So whether you learn that as a child or as an adult, I'd rather you learn it as a child. So if that bully comes at you, like with a punch, with a kick, with a shove, you very calmly put down your books, your bag, whatever you got to do, and you push, you kick, or you punch back. And here's the deal. You're probably going to get hurt. He's probably going to get hurt. And you're both going to end up in the principal's office. And who knows, you might get detention. You might even get suspended. You know what, though? That bully's going to learn you're not worth messing with, and everybody else is going to learn the same lesson. And you know what's funny? There's two situations in my life. I told you there were 3 total situations, 3 total times I was bullied. Well, 2 of them, I did confront the bully, and I paid a price both times. But it turned out the price was well worth it, because the bully went away. And my classmates in one case and my adult peers in another learned something about me. that I have self-respect, that I am confident, that I don't have to be perfect to stand up for myself, and that if you're going to come at me, you better be ready. Not because I'm mean or crude back or I mean you any harm, because both bullies, I wish to this day, I didn't have to do anything about it, but they did force my hand. It's incredibly useful to understand sacrifice. It's incredibly useful to know that it's often the case where you pay one price to gain a better prize. And the cool thing was is that I endured a punishment as a youth for getting into the fight, but I gained the next 2 years I was in that school respect. And that was worth every ounce of that punishment. And then as an adult, I put my job on the line. I let this person know in no uncertain terms that what was happening was going to stop, and I was willing to pay any price. And I put my money where my mouth was, so to speak. I had everything in place and submitted to show that this was over and I was ending it. And then what's ironic is I didn't end up losing a thing. I actually gained a lot, both in myself and from others. And that bully was removed from my life and from the life of others I cared about. And what's interesting, and this is what I'm going to end the video with, you know you're oriented towards the good. You're not perfect, but you're oriented towards the good. You're trying to do the right thing. That when you do defeat the bully, you don't have a grudge. You don't wish them any harm. You don't want to see them fail. You wish, just like God does, that they would just repent of that behavior. And that if they would, they could enjoy communion with you again. That they could have that relationship with you again and with others. And that you don't celebrate the death or the destruction of the wicked, that you desire their reconciliation, that you always wish the best for them. I'm telling you right now, if you have any grudges in your heart, it's killing you. Don't let that happen. Forgive even if you haven't been forgiven. Confront that which you must confront. Sacrifice what you must sacrifice. And you'll find that if you try to keep your life, you will lose it. But if you lose your life for His sake, you will find it. Take care.